Hello and welcome back to another great video. In this one, we are going to look at basically one of the most common methods used in JavaScript, the console log method. So popularly, everybody has used console log to basically print the print statement of JavaScript, right? But do you know that there are n number of different methods that come with the console object, right? So console has console log, console has a method called error, console has a method called info, and much more, right? So stop using just console log and use the console object in the correct way with each different method for each different use case. So if you are new here, make sure to like, subscribe, do all the good stuff that you see on the screen. We are already at 19 subs. We need just one more person to help us along the way to reach the 20 sub mark. So do your bit, right? Anyway, so I have written a Medium article that you can see on the screen right now. Same way we do it for every video, right? So if you like reading through articles, you can go to the article, or if you like watching videos, you're already here. So let's not waste any further time and get started. So as I told you, JavaScript console methods, right? So JavaScript console methods are one of the most popularly used print statements in JavaScript, right? But there are n number of different methods that come with it. You can have a console log, you can have a console error, you can have a console warn, you can have an info method, you can have a log method, you can have a debug method, you can have a table method, and you can also have a console time method. So you might ask, Apur, when do we use each one of them? That is what we are going to learn today, right? So let me open up my dev tools and show it to you one by one, right? So on the screen, you might be seeing my Chrome dev tools. You can do the same test in using your Node.js application or whatever you want, right? Cool. So the first one that we are going to look at is the most obvious one, console log method, right? So for console log, we simply write console log, and I will write here log. Okay. So once I do this, you can see that what it did, it simply printed the word log, right? Ideally, the log method should be used for simple logging, right? Now, when I say logging, then what I mean is for logging temporary data. So the data that is only relevant to this particular execution, to this particular session, right? So for example, I have logged that method A was called, right? Now this makes sense because method A was called is only relevant to this particular session. It is not some global information such as what is the URL or what is the port of this application, right? Because this type of information will be available across all different sessions, right? Because in most of the cases, the port or URL or some other configuration detail would be same. So that type of information that will be common, information that will not change, information that is not temporary, is usually consoled using console.info. So let's do that as well, right? So console.info, and maybe inside this you can write, for example, your port number is 8080, right? So some information like this. Cool. So there's a common misconception that console log and console info are the same thing, but they are not. When you use them, use log for logging temporary details, use info for logging more permanent, more common, more global details. Right. Now you have understanding of what log is, you have understanding of what info is, right? There's one more method called error, right? So as the name suggests, console error is used to, as the name suggests, to show errors, right? And the benefit that it provides is if you use console.error and maybe have some message like error occurred. Cool. So you will see that it comes in red color. Now, when you are going through a long list of logs, a long console outputs, right? Having a different color, it goes very long way. Like when I look at this screen, I immediately know, oh, okay, this is where the thing went wrong. This is where an error has occurred. So this is very important when you are going through your logs to detect a particular problem. Right. Now you know what log is, you know what info is, you know what error is. There's one more called console.debug, right? So debug is usually used for logging things that you don't want your customer to see, right? Or information that is only relevant to the developer. So for example, I am printing what is the data object or what is the JS object that I am working on or that I am processing or that has been processed recently, right? Now logging this to the customer, to the client side, is not really ideal, right? It is not relevant to them. It is only relevant to me because as a developer, I am able to process, make sense out of it, right? So usually these type of information, the debug logs, are hidden from the user. So for example, let me just show it to you. If I write console dot debug and debug information, okay, so you can see that it did not print anything. But is it really? Did it not really print anything, or was I not able to see? As I told you, the debug information is by default hidden on user side. But to actually see it, if you're a developer, if you want to see it, you can go here, click on default levels, and go and click on verbose. So when you click on verbose, now you are able to see the debug information, right? So since the information is not always relevant to the user side, it is more regarding the code and internal working of your application. You usually use debug logs to hide it from the customer, hide it from the client, right? Anyway, let's go and find one another method. That is, we know now what log does. We know when to use info, when to use log. We know when to use error, when to use debug, right? So what else does remain? Right. So one more method that we have is console table. So for example, you want to print an array, right? And you want to print an array and you want it to be in a pretty way, right? It's a long array, more with a lot of fields, with a lot of participants in it, right? And understanding it and making sense out of it could be difficult looking into your normal logs, right? In that scenario, what we do is we use console.table, and inside it, maybe, so let us use console.table method. So console.table, and inside it, I've just provided a simple array that has three things: apple, oranges, and banana, right? So when I hit enter, you can see how it comes in such a pretty formats, right? So if you have like maybe hundreds of fields, you can show the array, show the table in a very pretty and understandable and comprehensible format. So in such a scenario, you can make use of console.table. Then one last one, but very important method is the console time method, right? So as the name suggests, what it does, it allows you to set a timer to see how long a task takes, right? So for example, if I write console.time, right, now inside it, you need to put a label. Now the label here is actually the name of the timer, right? You can think of it as the name of the timer. So if I just name it as Apurva timer, right? Now it has started the timer. Now to end the particular time and to see how much time has passed, what you need to do is you need to use the console.time end method, right? And provide the same label to it. So if I provide Apurva timer to the same, it should be able to tell me how much time has passed since the timer has started. So now you can see that time end was executed, and this was the total number of milliseconds that had passed. Some around 28,000 milliseconds was passed since we started the timer. Now this is very important when you are trying to measure the performance of your application. You were trying to measure how much each part of the code is taking. So this is another and the final most useful console method. So now you have seen what info does, what log does, what error does, what debug does, what table does, what time does, and time end does, right? So across all these different methods, you can use all of them for their particular use case. And next time you see the console object, you won't simply use console log like a degenerate, but rather use what is necessary. Cool. I hope you took away something important. I hope this made you a better engineer. Let me see you next time. Bye.